I do want to go around first because some of you know each other well, a little bit, and some of you don't know each other at all, which is the point. And so maybe we'll start over here with Donte. If we can just go around, introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are, maybe take a minute or so, and then there's a quote underneath your microphone, if you will read that out afterwards, and we'll just go around the table.
All right. So my name is Donte, originally from Los Angeles. I like to call myself AKA Jerome Rogan.
I love that.
I have a podcast. It's called Tap In Podcast. I've been doing it roughly about 1.5 years now out of Arlington. We have a little studio there. John is one of our videographers. Yeah, and I've been doing comedy. Well, I did comedy for probably like the last 15 years. And within the last 2 years, I just put it to bed. And it's a long story why. We can get into that later. But yeah, so now I'm here in Dallas. Yeah.
Awesome. What is where did you get Tap In from? Like, tell us what that signifies.
It's a kind of like a hip hop term. Like tap in, like mostly like connect to, hey, when you come into town, just tap in with me. And I kind of took that, and what it means to me, what it meant to me then means so much different to me now, because the people I get to tap in with, that comes on my show, it's more of a spiritual, emotional kind of connection thing that I get to do with my guests every day. So the tap in phrase is now taking on a whole different meaning for me. Yeah.
So cool.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
And my quote here: "We are called to be strong companions and clear mirrors to one another, to seek those who reflect with compassion and a keen eye how we are doing, whether we seem centered or off course. We need the nourishing company of others to create the circle needed for growth, freedom, and healing." By Wayne Mueller. That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's really good.
Strong start already. That was a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
All right, Hanna.
I'm up. I'm Hanna. Nice to see and meet everybody. I actually work with Kim. I'm a facilitator and an executive coach at I Do 360. And, you know, my background really is a little bit different than most coaches. I come from actually working in financial services for a decade, where I, you know, sat in large companies and worked with them on their strategy and communication. But what I really loved the most was working with senior leaders on developing themselves, whether it was how they communicate, the message that they send out, so that people can understand it, their presence. And so that kind of led me into the coaching space, where, you know, I met Kim and I kind of had her as my mentor before I jumped in, because my personality wouldn't be to just jump in without knowing the information. And, you know, she's mentored me for the past year or so, and I kind of learned from her, picked up some clients, and have really begun to distinguish myself as a coach and the niche area that I'm in. So, yeah, and I've got 4 kids, and my life is pretty hectic, but I love it. And I'm really just enjoying this new journey, and being able to help people and really add value.
I love that.
My quote is, "We were born to unite with our fellow men and to join in community with the human race."
Love it.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Big D.
Hey, that's me. Hey, I'm Darren Clark. I have been a fitness professional in the Dallas area since 1988, so over 32 years or so. Started a business called Triple D Fitness. Dedicated, disciplined, determined is what it came from. However, since then, I've turned my passions of fitness and firearms and personal protection and combatives, and I changed the name to Triple D Action Group. So it's combining all those things. So with that, I've combined fitness, combative, self-defense, and firearms, as I said. But strictly from a protection specialist. I'm a level 4 security guard also, which would be quote unquote a bodyguard. I've worked on security teams at churches. I've also volunteered with a human trafficking organization here locally. Just recently, or it was about 6 weeks ago, we actually moved a young lady who was being abused from an area that was a little rough, and they asked me to come to be overwatch and kind of keep the security and safety. But there was no issue there. The person that was being abused the guy was actually in jail, but they were concerned about family coming. But anyway, despite, so I didn't mean to get kind of deep with that, but I've worked with churches and protect pastors and guests that have come in as well. I am a Christ follower. I've been married for 13 years. My wife is God's gift to me. I have an 8-year-old daughter who is my greatest teacher. I learned more from life about trying to be a father than anything. And so that's it in a nutshell. Hopefully we'll expound on that more. It feels good to be in community. Community, above all, is bigger than individuals. We are something much more than individuals when we are part of community. And this is how things ought to be. And as things are, as we are gathered together. And that's by Tony Blackshaw.
Awesome. I feel just much safer knowing Aaron's right next to me. So I'm lucky.
Why do you think I put him
strategic? Yeah. So hello everyone. My name is Jorge, and I just love to talk. So I heard a mic and I was like, I'm gonna be there. You know. So my name is Jorge. I'm a marketing professional. I've been in the Dallas area for about 10, 11 years, 3 different companies working in marketing. So yeah, creativity, new ideas. Every day, that's what I live for. That and connections. I think, as you can see in marketing, there's a lot that connects with connections. That's a little redundant, but you guys get the point. I'm currently married, and I'm actually finishing up my MBA degree at SMU. So pony up for all you SMU listeners out there. But yeah, it's a little hectic with the full-time job and getting graduate school and being married too. Got to give attention to the wife as well. Absolutely. It's a duty. But yeah, still early in my career. And then I guess passions and hobbies, running. I'm a big runner. So, you know, a bunch of people are like, you're one of those runners. But yeah, I love running. It's a big passion. And that's another way to connect and kind of any physical activity, anything like that. It's a way to connect with people. And it's a little bit hard with COVID and everything. But yeah, excited for races marathons to come back up. And I'll be there on the starting line. Cool. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. From Margaret Mead.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Kim Zoller, and my company is called ID360. My passion in this world and why I'm in this world is to really be a conduit to growth. Our company is about giving people skills, teaching people skills, and the how-tos for personal and professional growth every single day. Every single thing that each of you said resonates with me, one thing or another. And so what we do, with that being especially my passion specifically, is go to companies and work with their teams, their executives on leadership, on team building, communication skills, and coaching, a lot of coaching. And that's, Hanna and I were having a conversation on the way over here about different types of coaching and how some people love, they want specific tools, and some people just want to talk. They want to talk about what's going on with them and figure out, different ways and how to deal with things. So our goal is to be a resource to people for that growth. That's what we focus on. And yeah, just being here is just such an incredible pleasure. I mean, it's just feels so nice. So thank you, Carrie and John, for putting this together. My quote is, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much," by Helen Keller. And I just want to say, this quote in itself is, it's so true, because it really is about serving each other and serving this world, and whatever your higher power is, if you have one, that you are serving that too. Yeah.
Awesome.
So awesome.
Just to give an introduction, most of you know me, obviously. I have been a real estate entrepreneur for 25 years, 23 years, I don't even know, which I've loved. But what my passion is, and thank you for giving me that to start with, is seeing people. I see them. and I really see them. And I need to. I've realized that the gift back to me is so overwhelming. I sit here and I am in so much emotion, which in my other job is not what it's about. So I sit here completely in my passion, completely in my truth. And I know my partner in crime, John, we need to give you a microphone next time, would agree that we come up with these crazy ideas of connecting people in ways that are unique, but that we hope that matter. And we really hope that you can leave here changed on some level because of each other, and that we're facilitators for that. The podcasting, which Donte is very familiar with, is about hearing each other. And when you're in the microphone and when you've got these earmuffs on, like I call them, you know, all the sound dissipates around you and all you can do is hear each other's voices. To me, there's nothing like it in this world. And I didn't know I would fall in love with that. It was by fluke and an accident, and it's probably been the best accident I've had. So I hope to join you, Donte, in your quest as you are growing this love in this podcast world. That's what we're here to do. So thank you a million times for being here. It is because of you that we do this. You are the light that shines for us, and so we are here to serve. My quote: however, community is first of all a quality of the heart. It grows from the spiritual knowledge that we are not alive for ourselves, but for one another. Community is the fruit of our capacity to make the interests of others more important than our own. The question, therefore, is not how can we make community, but how can we develop and nurture giving hearts? Henry Nouwen. So obviously, we're going to talk about community, and that is our topic.
Can I say this, Carrie?
Yes, absolutely.
And it's so perfect that heart is what was on your quote. I've said this before, and that I always say the heart of the leader is the heart of the team, and your heart is so strong. The fact that you say you see people is what brought us all here together, you know. And I've known Carrie for a while, and Carrie, hey Darren, I'm like, yes. Okay, what are we doing? I mean, before I don't even know. I'm like, yes, I'll be there, but that's because of your heart, because of your passion, because you're living your truth, and when you do that, it draws people as well. So thank you. I just wanted to give you that as well, you know.
Thank you so much.
And as I look at the smiles, everyone is acknowledging that it's true.
100%.
That's all why we're here. Yeah, so.
Agree. Yeah.
I love it.
I'll say that every time. You know that.
Please, because when I get the dips, and believe me, I get the dips, because we all know the dips, right? The dips,
yeah.
right? He's laughing because he knows the dips.
Yeah.
When I get those dips just about every day, I'll remember that, because no matter how much you love something, until you can figure it out, you dip. And even when you do figure it out, you dip. So I think we're going to all dip forever. But
sometimes you figure it out in the dip.
Yeah, that's when you got to call.
That's right.
That's when you got to call Kim and Hanna and say, all right, how do I get out of
How do we get out of here?
Yeah.
Lift me from the dip. So community, to me, is, you know, it's kind of the word, right? Like everybody's using it, and it's becoming overused. I don't feel that you can overuse the word community, because I think it is so important, and really what we're all here to build on some level, right? Like our own level of community. So with COVID, I think, to me personally, I don't think that community has ever meant more to more people. I think we are longing and so thirsty for it and so missing it. And so my question, and I will start with Kim, is what do you think about the fact that community exists, and why do you think connection is more important, or do you think connection is more important than it was even before COVID started?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So why does community exist? You know, like this quote that I have, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. You know, you can look at community in so many different ways. You can look at it on a personal level. You can look at it on a professional level. Every great product, every great service that if you really research it, has come from a variety of different voices. And Jorge, you probably know this in marketing, that every single innovative idea comes from multiple voices. So we look at how community is built that way. How if we look around us at the things around us, it was all built really by a community. Although we may not see it as a community, you see it as groups of people who work together. And then we look at community of the people around us who support us. And we know from science, because that's a lot of what the work we do is the data and the research and the neuroscience, that when you look at all of that truly we are social beings. And we see also in our lives that all the research around aging is very dependent on community. And that people age faster with more disease, more stress in their lives when they are not surrounded by another person and other people. So there is an actual, not only a need for community in that feeling, it actually goes beyond the feeling. It goes into how full and long is your life. And so there's so many ways to look at this question that you're asking, because we think of it now, I mean, this last year has been very interesting because you haven't been able to be surrounded by everyone. It gives you perspective. Who is important? Who do I want in my life? How do I want them in my life? How do I choose that? What community do I want? How, and missing that, not just a need to be surrounded by people, a need to be surrounded by people who offer something that I shouldn't say offer to us, where we feel like it is a joint. We're offering to them, they're offering to us. So again, community, like there's so many things. I think this year has shown people that. I think it's put things, if we're smart, if we learn, we actually can see that perspective. That, what happened was at the beginning of COVID, people really had this like, oh, this is a lesson. Yeah. And then I, as time went on, a lot of people just got annoyed with the lesson. Mm-hmm. So I would challenge everyone and community very much a part of this, that we don't forget the lesson and that we really learn from this wonderful thing that was put in front of us, actually, to push us and to know and to show us how important we are to this life, to this world. So
that's great. And if I may, just to chime in, because that was awesome, Kim. But
please chime in, by the way. Thank you. Yes.
To your point, it's like a shift, right? Like a mindset shift that has to kind of happen, where you have to look at what happened as positive, right? Even though there's negative, right? But just to chime in on connection, and specifically around COVID from a marketing perspective, what we saw is that explains really what Kim was talking about. We're all talking about here about connection, why the growth of like something like TikTok happened, right? And I was one of those first people. I was like, I'm not going to get on this Vine knockoff. This is terrible, right? And now I can admit, I'm stuck on it, right? And early on in the pandemic, what the behavior that we started seeing, and marketers now eventually caught on, right, was that people were just connecting about being in the same situation, right? Trying to make some bread or watering your plants, whatever it was. We're all stuck in an environment. So TikTok was that connection, and it was very creative, and obviously that's why as marketers we like it, and it's grown so much. But the trend continues, right? This need for connection, and very recently, especially since I'm in digital marketing, I'm very attuned to what's the next thing, and that's Clubhouse, right? Oh, yeah. If you guys haven't heard about it already, I could offline talk to you guys already, because I'm a believer on that one too, but it's audio only, so no video, but it's a great method to connect with people, right? And it really exploded January this year, but yeah, Clubhouse is another example and brands still don't know how to figure that one out, but it ties to the real perspective that we're here today, which is about connection. And I think those two vehicles, those two channels were a way for people in the pandemic to connect in a creative way, to bond, and yeah, I'm active user on both, and it's a great way to keep the connections going,
Can you invite me? Don't you have to have an invitation?
Yeah, there's that exclusivity piece. You know what I mean?
There's a community, but you have to be invited in. So,
I think they got that right. That's what made Facebook popular back in its days, right? Was the edu address.
Right.
So in a very similar way, I think the people at Clubhouse got it right, where it's exclusive. So I will gladly.
Seriously,
I will gladly.
Seriously, I need a way in, dude.
Get me in.
What I want to say about community is I know I took it for granted how much interaction I had with people on a daily basis before, and I'll see them tomorrow. I took it for granted. But what I realized during the pandemic is how important community is I noticed my group of people, now everybody had a podcast. They wanted to connect in some kind of way without actually physically connecting. And the podcast world they just sprouted up. Everybody had a podcast. Even plumbers, they have a podcast now. I'm like, what are you talking about? But everybody wanted that connection, and everybody wanted to somehow be a part of a community or connect with people, even if they didn't really even know what to do or even how to start a podcast. Everyone was starting one during the pandemic. So community is super important.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when you think of yourself alone, it's self-serving. You just do everything for yourself. But when you've got a community around you, you really have to step out and think about those people. So, I do think during the pandemic, the community helped each other. And if, whether it was that you bought meals for the doctors or, you did an outside group birthday party for somebody who was turning, an important age and they couldn't have a party. Things like that, like you stretched a little bit for that community, for those community members. And I think in general, if you are just alone or, no community, so maybe you just might be doing things for yourself. But once you have a community around you, you really, I feel you feel the sense of urgency to help the community and keep the community afloat. And I say this all the time to my kids because they're, because I get asked to do a lot of volunteering and sit on certain committees. And, it might not be the thing I love the most in the world, but it's important, right? Because I want to show them that it's important to help others and support your community. So I think that was especially true now when there's a lot of vulnerability. There's people who, are sick and need a doctor contact. There might be somebody who lost a job and might need something. So I think the community that I was around really stepped up, and that shows you the importance of community.
Absolutely.
I think you're created to be in community, to be with one another, and whatever that group is, whether small group, big group. There's a term. It's actually a title of a movie I watched years ago, but I've kept the title as kind of a way of life, and it was called Collateral Beauty. And in the midst of chaos, in the midst of calamity, there is always, and kind of what you're saying is that there's always some other side of that where people come up to help. People help the doctors. People reach out to those who weren't available at the time. And so I think community is strong. I think community is necessary. And I even think, as you talked about people in the midst of this chaos, you thought, well, they're tired of the lesson. And my thought was, well, if you're tired of the lesson, then you haven't learned it yet, and you're going to continue to endure it, and you're going to have to continue to do it until that lesson manifests itself into a new level of understanding.
Right.
Because at that point that you're tired about it, then you're still tired about, you're concerned about yourself.
That's right.
And not being aware of others around you and how either you can affect them, or that reciprocation that you talked about before. You're still looking at yourself.
Yeah. Because you could argue that, and I'm sure Hanna and Kim will agree with this, you can't have growth without the help of community,
right,
Yeah.
Like you can definitely develop yourself, and I think we all should, right? But I think that's such a key point about development and growth is you actually need the help of others, right?
And sorry.
No.
It's a thin line between interjection and interruption.
No. It's
I try to walk that carefully, man.
No, that's why I say don't give me a mic because I'll just go on. So interrupt me.
I'm shy too, as you can tell. But if you develop yourself, okay, so what do you do with that? You do nothing with that develop unless you go out into the world and share what you developed, share what you learned, share what your growths or what the troubles were. I mean, it serves no purpose. Great, I'm good in my corner in my chair. What if I take a step away? It does absolutely nothing.
Have you guys seen that the show Undercover Billionaire with Grant Cardone?
Yeah.
When I tell you how Grant got just injected himself into the community and built his business, like start making connections. And I was just like, why don't I do that? What he's doing in my own world. And I was like, that it seems like a no-brainer when you think about it. But before I was just like, you know what? I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But until I started looking at what he was doing, I was like, you know what? I need to reach out to more people to get them involved in what I got going on. And I was like, this is great. This is just, I guess that's why he's a billionaire.
You either, well, and that brings me to my next question too. No, you first.
Well, I was going to say, but you look at someone on TV and go, well, I can't do that. But yes, you can.
Yeah.
In your own community, wherever that may be. You know?
100%. Yeah. Well, and you know, I'm actually a Grant Cardone lover, but you either love him or you probably don't. I love him. I think he's fantastic. Yeah. But it does bring me to the next question, which is like, I do think on some level we all have to build our own communities in order to be successful in business. What do you think? How do you think you actually build a community? I mean, what are some ways that you do it?
I think first it's knowing what your passion is and reaching out to people who have similar interests. And then as the two of you guys are, oh yes, this is idea, they may know somebody, and then you start eventually one by one bringing in people with similar interests, and then that's how you build your community. So
I think you have to be authentic though, because a lot of times in this time, especially with social media and the things we've been talking about, people are trying to create their image and create a persona of who they are, and it's really not. And I think you have to be authentic. There is a niche. How you say that? You know, niche.
Either sounds right.
We understand.
You know what I mean? Yeah. No matter where you are. I mean, we kind of joked before about even plumbers having podcasts, but there are people out there who are watching and listening to that podcast. Because so if you're authentic in who you are, there'll be that same thing, that reciprocation. There'll be somebody who will be appreciative of it, and someone that you can connect with, and there's that community right there as well.
Yeah. You know, something that I think that has been a shift for me in my life personally is within that community and finding like-minded people, to me, it goes even deeper in, and I think this is also what you're saying, Donte, and definitely, Darren, what you just said. It's all about serving people. It's about what you can do to serve someone else. Because if we're really, it goes back to the first question of community. If I'm in it for myself, which, you know, I started my business 30 years ago, I was all about like, what am I doing? How am I doing it? What am I doing? How am I doing this? How am I growing this person? How am I growing that client? How am I doing it? And along the way, and I think this year in particular for me personally, it has really been such an amazing shift to, wait a minute, how does this serve my client? And it takes it further than even offering value. It goes that extra, now I'll start a meeting. I had a coaching before this we're so lucky, so blessed, we get to coach some of these executives at Microsoft. And I was on this phone call or on this video with him, and he was saying to me he had a meeting with his boss. How is he known in this meeting? Like he said, how do I get him to know? And this is like the boss's boss's boss. So how do I get him to know how good I am? And I said to him, he will only know how good you are when you can serve him. And it's not kissing up to, it's truly like figuring out what serves him. If you believe in what you're doing and what he is doing, and how can you serve him? So if you start with that question, it will change your entire relationship. So I think that's what when you look, like merging your two questions, Carrie, so far, I truly believe that it comes from serving and true serving.
Yeah.
So, question, Kim, and you may or may not know, but as you said that about how what can I do to be good enough so that the boss or whatever the executive could see him? And my thought in my head was like, well, just be good at what you do. Be good enough to be recognized. But sometimes when people are trying to get recognized, I want to be seen, but not really doing the work or not doing what's necessary to be good to be seen. So then it becomes more just about ego as opposed to truly, humbly, as you said, greater than adding value, but simply to be of service or do what you do to the highest level, with extreme performance. If you perform to extreme, there will come a time, it may not be at the speed that this particular one person is looking for, but it will come at a time where it's authentic and will be real because of the work that you did.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I do think that it's funny, Darren, because I totally agree with you. And I want to add to that I think it is really, truly important to ask for what you want.
Agreed.
And to figure out, like, in finding those like-minded people, is asking what is valuable, what is not only that, but to say, like, this is what I want while I'm serving, which it's so hard, right? When you think about it, because one is very egotistical and it's all about you. And yet, if you are really doing the good work, you want people to notice. So there is that fine line between, I want someone to notice my good work and what I'm committed to, and I want to do it because I want to serve.
Agree. I agree with that.
Yeah. I think building a community also involves putting yourself out there, right? So you might, for example, for myself, right? It might not be the most natural thing to do certain things, right? It, like you're saying, it's authenticity. Is it authentic to myself? I always ask, is this authentic to what I want to be or who I am? Sometimes I have to remind myself there is a little bit of risk where it might not be perfect and you've got to step out and accept it, right? So it's constantly the balance. So, from the background that I came from, which was very kind of, I would say, linear and less creative in appearances, to come out and now kind of need to be a little bit more out there, be a little more creative. It's hard, but I found that as long as I'm okay with taking that risk and I'm not judgmental of myself or others, you do find a community. And it might be different than you've had before, and it might be different than what you thought it would look like, but it works. It's just your mindset that needs to be like, okay, I'm going to connect, and it may not be the person I thought it was going to be, but it'll work. Right. And that's what I really think. It's stepping a bit out of your comfort zone and taking a risk, and you would be surprised what you get.
And diminishing the fear. Sometimes it's a fear that you mentioned, risk, that's always there. But some people are fearful of what might happen, but it's like, it's not going to change who you are from being authentic. Like, it's still who I am.
Right.
There's always an apprehension of putting yourself out there.
Sure.
Or when you serve someone and you don't get recognized, right? Because we've all been there where we do something for someone, but then don't get anything in return, right? And I think those are the instances where one needs to, assess, okay, well, I did this for this person, didn't get what I responded, but it's okay. But I got to continue to, right? Yeah. Because that's the problem. Sometimes people just, get guarded up because they do something, expect something in return, don't get it, and then they don't want to do it again, and that's what, you should try to avoid.
Can I add something to that? Just a different, like, a perspective. And it's funny because we've been, with our clients, we've been reading different books and doing different things. And there's a book that we just did with our growth club called Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. And it was interesting. And I don't necessarily, this thought does not actually come from him. He was a monk, and this actually does come from his, what he learned. And it also, if you think about any type of religion, it comes, I'm sure, from that too. So I just want to throw this thought out to you, and from Jorge, what you just said, which is, I just love this. And that is that when we give attention to someone, or we place a lot of love or a lot of effort into someone or something, and we have these expectations for what we want from that person in return, if we open ourselves up and actually open our eyes and realize that we are going, it's like a circle, we are going to get it back. We just may not be getting it back from that person. So when we realize that even in this building of a community, and even in these lessons, that if I am looking to someone for something, an expectation that I have from someone, that if and if I don't open up, I'm going to miss that I am going to get this beautiful thing back. Because again, it's not about that I gave and I expect something back. It's truly about I gave to give. And it will come back because we trust that the universe is like that, and that it will come back. It just may come back as something different. And how beautiful it is when we realize we get it back in a way that is actually from someone totally different, and or something that's totally different. So it's just something to think we've been talking about recently, and how I think it's really pretty amazing if you just open up to that.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I've seen Jay say it. I don't know a whole lot of his depth, but I've seen him, and he has some powerful words. When you talk about expectation, I remember when I was like 14 or 15, I cut a little thing out of a paper. I mean, it was literally that small, but it said, those who expect a lot are often disappointed a lot. And I've kept that with me a long time. And so similarly, if you're doing something, if I do something for you, an expectation of you doing something back to me, that disappointment, first of all, I'm not being authentic. I just want to do and serve because I want to do and serve. I'm not without the expectation. But if it doesn't come back and now I'm like, well, I knew I shouldn't have whatever XYZ, well, then then the purpose in which you did it was not authentic in the first place.
Yeah. Right.
But if you just reap what you sow is the term that you use, it will come back to you one way, and sometimes even threefold.
Right.
100%.
More than even intended to.
Right. And you have to, it's like you have to be open. You know, you talk about mindset, Jorge. It is all about mindset of how we go into every single day. It's like, you know, waking up and saying, this is how I am today. Like, this is because, again, you know, I'm so fascinated by the research and the data and what they're doing in our minds and the study of mindfulness and what that means in the last 20 years and of how it's become really a movement, a science, and how they've been doing all the science around it. And what's so incredible about it is, again, the idea that our minds, the neuroplasticity, the ability to grow our minds, the ability to bring in new things every single day is really determined by how I approach a day. So if someone, you know, I have someone, it's very funny, I have someone who's staying at my house right now, who's in transition, and she said to me, "You're the best person to wake up with." And I, not that we really are waking up together, but you know, when I walk into the living room and she's having her coffee, but I that is on purpose. That is not by chance, because the fact is that our brains are really wired for negativity, and our brains are wired for fight, flight, and freeze. In fact, every 4 seconds. So with that in mind, I know that when I wake up and I think about, like, what am I grateful for specifically, and where is my mind, and how am I going to be today? And I do lots of things that are around that. And it didn't come from me. It's like learning from all these people who are like, what kind of state are you in today? And so, and even the airplane thinks that. Listen, the fact is that being aware that there's an airplane, because we're right here, right now, with each other and the airplane.
And the airplane.
Kim, you said
and the airplane. Go.
Well, you said there's a mindful movement, and I think in not being biblical, but King Solomon, who had riches and women and horses and property and all the things, and I know it's like, it's all useless, it's wasteless, doesn't mean anything. That's biblical. But on the other side of that, can bring it more to today, more contemporary, is I think people, you know, everybody's striving and everybody wants, and that's okay to have the things. But I think people are starting to realize there's more to it than just what can I have, what can I wear, what can I drive. And so as you said, there's a mindfulness movement because people are realizing there must be more than just that.
Yeah,
because I at least in my experience in the business world, the unfortunate reality is that people are still too apprehensive about helping others, or, you know, because they're all focused on themselves, right? And Donte, you talked about you appeared in your life where you were just doing you, right? And that's a mentality that a lot of people have, especially young in their careers, is just let me do me, focus on me, get my accolades, do my things. But that's, again, back to what we've been talking about. The community helps, to actually achieve goals. And I think that's where the mindset needs to shift a little bit with most people, where it's like, hey, and you're gonna help someone out at work, maybe different department, whatever, and it won't pay you back until maybe 2 years later, but it'll happen, right? Kind of, you have to have a little bit of faith in that. And then I also want to venture to talk about what I've experienced through graduate school, through COVID, right? Because one of the big values of getting a graduate degree is the networking, right? And halfway through my degree, COVID hit, and we're no longer going into the classroom. So that's been a good learning experience, because actually what it's proven is that you can still network and connect with people even though you're not face to face, right? And we're doing that kind of in a way here, right? But in a way and that's what I call the true networking, because we've been kind of talking about it, where it's like you do something for someone, a colleague, a classmate, introduce them to someone or meet with someone that you wouldn't originally meet with, and you don't expect anything in return, right? And the true beauty is that, it will pay you back. Maybe not with that interaction, but later it will. And I think that's the valuable piece, but people can't lose sight of that, right? And to the expectations point, can't just do things to expect something in return,
Yeah. I'm obsessed with the, I'm probably too far from this. I'm obsessed with the concept of radical empathy, which is a broadly used marketing term, which I know you are familiar with. And really being radically empathetic towards your clients, your community, the people that you serve. And that is the motto to success. I think, and as Kim was talking too, sometimes the gift is just in the giving, and you get back more than you asked for, because there's something about the giving that you didn't know you needed, but it's like you give and then you're just like, that felt good, let me just keep doing it, and you're just feeling good all the time. And I think there's probably so many waves that come back to you just based on that element of it. But how do you think, Hanna, that you can develop radical empathy? How do you get to know what your customers, your people, your community wants?
Yeah, so I think there are certain people who have certain personality types that are almost born with empathy. Many of those people are very social. They might be in certain professions, and it's very easy for them to feel for someone. When I have coaching clients, and I've done a lot of these kind of tests, which show the type of personality I am. And it is a social, and it's an empathizer. And I feel for, and I really relate to my clients, and I feel for them, and I want to help them, and I want to help them to develop. That is my personality type, right? So if they have a goal, I want to get them to that goal. I'm invested in it, really invested in that person, right? Not everybody is like that. But I do believe, I have an example off the top of my head. There's somebody that, my husband works with, and he's a physician, and it's difficult. Physicians have, it's very stressful environments, and you might say things, and you might not mean it to come out a certain way, but it does come out a certain way. And, I'm always like, oh my gosh, I wish I could teach this person how to say things better, so that people appreciate and like him better and will want to work for him. It's so easy. That type of person, and he doesn't have any empathy. He doesn't have those characteristics in him. I think sometimes it has to be taught and learned. Not everybody is born with it. I think we work on it with clients. I think sometimes I'll work on it with my children. It's like I said, it has to be learned, and sometimes it has to be taught. And so I think that's what we have to do in community, and even with corporations and leaders. They have to really put that into practice, and then tell the people that work with them, hey, we're going to learn a little bit about how to have empathy. We're going to learn a little bit about having a conversation. And Kim and I do that often when we go and do these leadership programs. How to have a conversation that has some empathy involved.
Wow.
I think that, just to piggyback onto what Hanna's saying about the learning and the teaching of empathy, and radical empathy, is that what we know, again from research, is that empathy is actually having empathy as a social skill is very different than having empathy as a leadership skill. And that empathy as a leadership skill is a skill. It's a taught and learned skill. And it actually is the most important leadership skill of today. And all the studies that they do around leadership and what's most important for leaders, like why do people follow people? Why do they stay in jobs? Why do they not leave? Why are they driven to do something extra, go the extra mile? It all comes back to, do I feel that the people around me have empathy? Do they get me? Do they understand me? Do they understand my situation? And so what Hanna's saying is very, very true, in that, some people have natural, and like they're worried about everyone. That is not necessarily radical empathy,
right?
Because just because I feel it, I might actually feel it too much and not be able to do anything about it. And so when I learn it, when people can actually learn what verbiage, and learn like how to put themselves and how to actually be curious. Because empathy is innovation and practice. That's what empathy is. Empathy, if I want to be innovative, I need to learn. And I need to be able to have ideas and build on an idea. And so that's true empathy. And that's really, when we talk about radical empathy, what it comes down to is being radically open, radically curious, so that we can learn from from everything around us, and learn from other people.
I think that, like, you have different personality types, like you said, Hanna, and some people are empathetic just because of who they are. But those who are not, but yet if they are leaders or can be taught or understand the reason why it may serve them well, then if you guys can, and people like you can teach them and show them the way, then the term I'm going to come to is, if you act the way that you want to become, there'll be a day when the way that you want to become will no longer be an act. If you just continue to do it and continue to do it and make it part of your life, even if it's just for that carrot. Okay, I want to be better, I want to attract these people, I'm good for business. But if you do it every day, you can't help it to become a part of who you are. And then you have that created within the individual or the group of individuals in that community.
Can I ask Kim, what's the difference, if you can explain to me, the difference between empathy and sympathy?
So it's really interesting, because years ago, it was really like hand in hand. And then people started really getting into it. And what is it? So what the difference is as it is defined today, is that empathy is our ability to, I understand what you might be going through. I can put myself in your shoes because I've had something similar. Sympathy is like you're in there with them so much that you actually aren't, you're actually not open enough. You're just in it. So if I'm sympathetic, let's say you come in, let's say we work together, and someone said something to you, and you're complaining, they're complaining, right, to you. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm so there with you. They're the worst, and you go down this rat hole together, then that is sympathy. You're in it. Empathy is like, that sounds frustrating. That is frustrating. I don't like it either when people do that. I can understand
how you feel.
I can understand how you feel. And interestingly enough, their phrases of empathy, right? So like, I understand how you feel, and I don't know if any of you have experienced this. That is a phrase that I try very hard not to use.
Because people go, there's no way you know how I feel.
You don't know how I feel.
You're not going through this.
Yeah, like you don't know how I feel. So there's a list. It's very interesting. There's the Gottman Institute, which is an incredible resource. It's actually for relationships. The Gottmans are have done all the research for the last 50 years on why couples stay together. So it really has nothing to do with business, and yet it has everything to do with business. And they had a list of 50 empathy statements. I'll send them to everyone. They're so good. So basically, I looked at that list and I was like, yeah, this one I like. This one I cannot imagine myself saying. And for me, I had to really start. I'm a talker. So if we talk about styles of people, I'm a talker, so I want to talk, and sometimes you have to listen, right? Like all the time. I mean, really, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. So if I'm listening to you and I'm empathetic to you, I really do have to think about not only where are you coming from, I also want to verbalize it to you. Like, oh, I can imagine what that feels like, or I cannot imagine how that feels. And I am with you, and I'm standing here with you, as opposed to, again, yes. Oh, yes, I agree. And then you're getting into it. That doesn't help the person. That doesn't make them seen. That means that you want to be seen too. So hopefully that was a good explanation.
Yeah.
And if I could add another resource, because it really ties into this, there's an author, TED Talk.
Brene Brown.
Yes,
Yeah.
you kind of knew exactly what I was going. So over the pandemic, I read her book, Dare to Lead.
Yeah, amazing.
And it's so great. It talks about empathy, and it's something actually, so from a business standpoint and then to real life, actually with my wife, we use a lot.
Yes.
Because she has a real cool technique where it's when you're talking to someone about feelings, you could say, well, listen, the story in my head is that you did this because of this, right? So that there's no defensiveness, and you can get emotions out, because it's hard sometimes, especially with a significant other, to kind of go deep in emotion. So I thought that's a great hack that can also apply to a lot of things, right? But saying, oh, hey, the story in my head is you did this because of this, but is it true or not? And
you guys talking about Brene and her husband at the lake?
Yeah, the lake.
Yes, exactly. Her TED Talk is awesome.
I'll tell you something. That story was that story has been very meaningful for me, and I think she's an unbelievable resource for people.
Who's this again?
Brene Brown,
and she's on Netflix.
So
too.
it's interesting because she really did a lot of research around empathy, vulnerability, and then Oprah made her famous. The thing about she was around for a lot longer, and then. Because of Oprah, which is so amazing, she really did become like a thing. And the great thing is that her work is amazing.
I wonder, since you say that, kind of going back to our conversation before, is how long was she just doing good,
right,
and being empathetic,
right, and not getting noticed,
getting noticed, until it came back around.
Many years.
In Houston, I believe, researching.
Many years.
Talking about earlier.
Many years. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably goes back to exactly what you're saying. She didn't do it for I actually was listening to Dr. Phil the other day. He was on a podcast. He was phenomenal on this podcast. And he had zero expectation about being famous, was never in his head. Okay, this is what he says. I don't know Dr. Phil. I don't watch Dr. Phil either. But he said that, like, in his old career, and I have a friend that used to work with him and knows him very well, but that he really actually, when publicity used to strike, and because he was in all these high profile cases, he was sort of like, no thanks. And then of course Oprah made him famous. But people do what they do to be an expert at what they do because they love it, and eventually, like you said, they get it back. Didn't expect it to be from Oprah, because nobody even expects to meet Oprah. Then all of a sudden Oprah's calling. And so I think that actually is a very, broadens your point of what you said earlier about how, you can give and you can give of yourself. And then all of a sudden Oprah calls and there you are.
And by the way, I really do believe that it's okay to ask for it. Right. It's okay to say, like, I want to be on Oprah, or I want to be recognized. And I can say for us, like, we talk about this all the time. Like, why do I want to be known? I want to be known because I believe I have something to offer, right, and something to serve. And if I believe that, then of course, how many more people do we want to serve? As many as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So there is something to that doesn't only have to be about, I want to be rich and famous, because as Darren, you were saying, we do know that it is much more than being that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
For sure.
So to couple on that, that's a great, sort of way to segue into this. And I'm actually going to ask Jorge, because he hasn't really told us exactly what he does, but I know.
I was waiting for
I'll let you say it. It's not my story to tell. But, how do we build, since you are a digital expert, how do we build our message to our community and speak to them authentically, which I think is super important? Talk about that.
Yeah, so Carrie knows this. I work for a company called Avocados from Mexico, and we've done some Super Bowl spots, and you can attribute a lot of the growth of guac and avocados to over the years. It's not the millennials eating avocado toast. We had something to do with it, but yeah, I think the company is small, relatively speaking. But one of the things we learned early on in our marketing, because we're essentially just a marketing entity, is that the best way to connect with consumers and the best type of marketing to do it's not a no-brainer. It's just have people do the talking for you.
Right.
So I know there's so much talk, especially in digital marketing, about influencers, right? But I think there's so much good in influencers if done right, because it's the best form of marketing. It's word of mouth, right? Like, I don't want to see an ad on Facebook for a shoe. I want my best friend to tell me, yo, you got to check out the shoe, and you go check it out. So that's why influencer marketing in a way has been growing, and it's very successful. But yeah, I think at Avocados from Mexico, we learned early on, just untap people's love for the avocado, right? Our social media sometimes is just user generated content, and just let the people talk and do what they do with avocados in whatever ways they do it, but showcase that, and that's what's been great. And we've seen good successes and growth, and that helps with inspiration, that helps with innovation, and I like how you said earlier, Kim, innovation is empathy in action, right? And that's so great, because in a way, as a brand, as we innovate, we can try to be empathetic, and we could try to see what people are going through, obviously in tough times or in the good times too, and just do something on that, right? Something that creates impact. And it's just about listening as a brand and doing something innovative while trying to really reach people.
And I notice, Jorge, that you really live your brand, because in your green, he's wearing a green shirt.
I had to.
I mean,
it's match.
One of my as you're saying that, one of my favorite stories is about the Swiffer, the cleaner, and how that came to be. I just love this story.
There's a movie, Jennifer Lawrence.
Wait, not the Swiffer. Is it the Swiffer?
What was the mop? Sorry.
No, she had the mop.
Yeah.
This was the the Swiffer you put on a different bottom.
Yes.
So how that came to be, and it actually, took over that whole market, was that they were trying so hard to come up with a mop that people wanted. And they had door-to-door sales, and they would go and they would knock on people's doors. Can I talk to you about your mop? Wow. What do you like? And then one day, the salesperson was in this person's home, and they spilled on the floor, and they ripped off paper towel, and they took their paper towel and they stuck it on the bottom of their broom. And they started cleaning it up, and that is how the Swiffer came to be. Wow. And this was after years and years and years of research on one mop after another.
But isn't that the practice of radical empathy?
It
exactly
is
what you just said.
It is.
Yep. To get to the heart of it, you go door to door knocking to try and find the answer.
You get curious.
Yeah.
You get curious.
I love that.
Yeah.
Donte, I'm interested in your perspective, because you meet so many different, unique people.
I do. I think the thing about what I love about it is I'm curious. I'm curious to hear other people's story. And for me, it keeps me engaged, because once they say one little thing, it opens up my mind. So what about this? And what about that? And I feel like everybody has a story to tell. And I just wanted, I think that's where I'm great at, just asking the question and let them lay it out and even I started, and this is going off a little topic, started watching this guy named Chris Voss. He's a FBI hostage negotiator. And just his techniques about how to keep people talking and keep people engaging. I even started using that in my interview style. Okay, so you said, it seems like, you sound like, and then people just keep talking and talking. And that's what I love, because I don't really necessarily like to do all the talking. I want to hear your story. Right. I really want to dive into, okay, what was the mindset? What were you thinking when you did this? What made you go after that? What made you do this? And I don't know. I think that's I guess I'm very empathetic. When it comes to
I think you just realized that.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, when it comes to people's story.
Yeah. I love it.
And by doing that, man, just like you saying, you want to hear what they have to say. they leave that you haven't said a word or many words, and they left probably going,
Yes.
man,
Right.
that Donte, he's
Yeah.
he's a great talker,
Right.
he's a great communicator.
Yeah.
You said
Yeah.
that, you just ask him questions. I
what-
love talking,
Yeah.
love talking to that guy.
Yeah,
But-
and it's because
People feel like that it's just them and you.
Yeah, and I want to hear what they have to say, what their
Yeah.
perspective is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
I'm finishing up a program actually right now through Columbia in New York, specifically for organizational executive coaching. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the strategic questioning. When you are coaching, you have to listen, right? Obviously, listening is very important, but you also have to really ask those questions. They're going to like really get a client talking.
Yeah.
And it's not just throwing any questions like my 4-year-old asked. It's really very strategic in how you have the questions. So when I'm coaching, I have like a sticky note that's like strategic in your questions. Don't waste space. Make sure whatever you are asking has value, and that's going to get a client really going to kind of unwind and come out. And so for certain clients, it might be very reflective questions. For others, it might be very objective questions. But I have to prepare myself because, I like to talk, and I like to talk, and I have to remind myself, don't interrupt,
Right.
and be very strategic about the space that I'm taking up. And it is actually so, it's amazing what you get out of a person. Like I practiced it on my son who's 15 and doesn't talk a lot. When I asked him very specific questions, he actually spoke. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hear his voice.
This
like
works.
my 15, right? This works. Like this very specific in how the questions I've asked him was able for him to come out much more on a topic. So it's very interesting because it's right. You're like, put questions out, but it's sometimes the specific questions you ask that might really drive that conversation where you really learn about a person and uncover a lot.
Yep.
I love that.
And coming back to communities, what we're talking about is people is understanding how people communicate. So the more as Donte, you're asking more questions and hearing their story, or same thing as you're asking those strategic questions, you're also establishing rapport, and then you can communicate back to them in the way that they communicate with you,
Right.
and do this, and then that establish a rapport, and you get more information and so on and so forth. So yeah,
Yep.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Jorge, with what you were talking about, because I think that's so interesting that you're allowing like the voices to be told from basically your consumers. Do you ask them for that? I mean, how do you find all of those beautiful pictures and all the things that you guys post?
Yeah, I think brands would just be surprised. All it takes is ask, right? And that's what the power of social media has been able to do, is just literally you act like a person, a brand acts like a person and just interacts. And we have a team, a community management team. We specifically use the word community on this person's job description, because that's what they do, is they engage the community in dialogue. And a lot of the times, what I've seen in my experience is it's a lot of is reactionary, like a lot of brands. And that's where sometimes you get some things like PR crises, or recently in the news was shrimp and cinnamon toast crunch, and trying to deal with that whole mess. Yes, that was a little bit of a PR mess. But I think the better point here is that brands can be proactive and ask. It doesn't hurt, right? Most 9 times out of 10, most people are willing to give their opinion, right? Doesn't mean you have to take it, right? But a lot of the times it's good, especially when it comes to like innovation or product design or anything like that. It's so good to first get a feel for people's and what their opinion is, and some of it's valid, some of it isn't, right? That's the reality of it. But yeah, all you have to do is ask. It's that simple. I think sometimes in marketing we like to complicate things, but it's all you have to do is ask and hear.
Yeah.
It's kind of what Kim said before, just ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we overthink it in marketing, I think, sometimes, and don't know how to come across. I feel like you have something to say.
Always.
I'm interested because marketing something like avocado is different than marketing coaching services. So I am interested in what you have to say.
I'm not sure what I was going to say. I was just going to say it all
Yeah.
No, it all resonates. It is all about it. It is really all about the asking. I really do believe that. And it's making people feel like a sense of belonging.
Right.
I mean, even in the avocado, which of course I want to go home and eat some.
Yeah.
But
I would appreciate the support. Yeah.
When we look at marketing, you really do have to look at, is there a need for it or a want for it? And sometimes we need something. Like Darren, the minute you start talking about what you're doing, you think, okay, I need it, right? Oh, I need that. And then you have to say, well, do people buy on need or want? And what we find is that many times people don't buy on what they need. They buy on what they want because they see an end out of it. They see an outcome that they're going to get from it. So what we do is, sometimes, especially because we are corporately driven, our marketing is very much a need.
Right.
The fact is that the people sitting in the room have to want it because they have to see that this is going to help them in their lives. Otherwise, they're going to sit there and say, well, this isn't really, thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm almost thinking, too, for you, you're in a position, it's super difficult, actually, because you've got to take their ego out of it, and they are used to leading with ego a lot of times. So how do you remove so that they can want it? How do you remove the ego or whatever's standing in their way? Because they actually have to admit they have something to learn, or that there's growth to be had in order for you to come in and do your job.
Yeah.
Can I add to that question? Or do you engage the ego at times as well?
Oh, that's
exactly where I was going. Yeah,
you got it.
That is exactly where I was going. You have to. For some people, you have to engage the ego.
Right.
And then they are like, oh, yeah. And the fact is that you at times have to match the ego, right? Because they want to know that if you have something to share, that number one, they want to know what's in it for them. And they want to know that, what you're talking about. So you do have to know your stuff. It's like Hanna's saying, you have to do your homework about what you're doing. The nice thing is that all of us here are passionate about what we do.
Right.
And when you're passionate about what you do, all you want to do is find out more. And so it's very easy to be passionate and to have this thing that you want to teach people. And at the same time, you do have to engage, where is it going to benefit them? And the minute they see it, they're like, I'm in.
Yep.
Right.
And so, and I actually said to Hanna on the way over here that I actually prefer those types of people because they're hard to sell. And then once you sell them, they're like, oh my gosh, they're the most fun to work with.
And then you're going to tell everybody.
Yeah,
they're the ones.
And they're fun to work with. Because you're challenging them and they're challenging you, and you're passionate about what you do. So you're like, all right, bring it on.
Let's go.
Right?
Let's go.
Yeah. So there's a lot of there's a lot of psyche in all of this, and it is a lot of being authentic, and when people aren't, and when people are in it for the bigger reason and because of the authenticity, and when they're just in it for themselves. Yeah, and I'm sure on the podcast you can hear when someone's doing a podcast and they're in it for themselves, they're doing the podcast and really all you're hearing is them, not the people that they're interviewing.
Yep.
So it's the same thing.
And last plug again, but Clubhouse, people started noticing that too, right?
Okay, we need help.
I will love to
we
talk
all
about
need help.
But the last thing I'll say is the authenticity piece is Clubhouse has been exploding, and then now some people are starting to hate on it precisely because there are too many people who go on it who just try to voice, oh, I'm a coach or a lifestyle nutritionist or the most common thing. And you can tell when those people are just trying to sell something,
right,
and using that vehicle, that platform as that instead of the authentic. Oh, I just want to connect with you.
Right.
So, anyways, last plug. I won't mention Clubhouse again, but love to talk about it.
Yeah. No, we'll do a masterclass on that.
Yes.
You and I will talk.
Yes.
That'll be perfect.
Right. So before we part, our timing is coming up. I think leaving our audience, if you will, and each other more than that with some tips of how, I would like to hear everybody's perspective on their advice, their tips for building community. I'm going to start with Darren next to me. What would you say to somebody?
I'll go back to what I said before. Well, a couple of things. You said one thing, Hanna talking about feeling the risk, is not be afraid. I mean, simply to talk to people. I mean, people are there. Sometimes you may get rejected. Don't take it personally. still go there. There will be someone who will resonate with what you're saying or what your personality is or what it is you're trying to communicate. So take fear out of it. Be authentic. I'll go back to that again, and what you're communicating with, and just do what you do from your heart and do it well. Have extreme ownership and accountability in what you do.
Yeah.
So good. I'm glad this is being recorded because there's so many sound bites.
Hannah.
I think, you said a lot of it. Like I said, I think you have a thought in your head of what a community is, and I think that's not always so good. I think you have to be open-minded to everybody around you to recognize that person could be part of your community. And if you're only looking for some people within a square, it's going to be very hard for you to build that. So I feel like going in, not being judgmental, being open-minded, not assuming negative intent, always assuming positive intent. We did a LinkedIn on that post on that also, but not thinking that person won't like me. Like, right. It's okay. Like, you might have it all wrong. And so I think going in with that type of mindset is going to make it a lot easier for you to really build community and relationships.
Okay. I was just thinking, like, I have two different ways that I like to build community. One, if you're talking to a person who's more reserved, I would say find ways to actually serve the community that you're interested in. Like Kim was saying earlier, once you're able to give and you're able to serve that community, now you're part of what they're doing, and it is something that you're passionate about. And on the other hand, if you're passionate about serving people, I'd say lead with your passion. Lead with that this is something that other people will benefit from, and let your passion pull you to wherever. And I what I found out is once you lead with your passion and you're so excited about this idea or this thing, other people will they'll just swarm to you, mm-hmm. and then you can build your community that way.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in listening to everyone, it's all of it, it's doing all of it. To add to what everyone has to say, I would say that you build community by where we started, Carrie, which is what you said. And I don't know if you said this actually as we were going or before we got going. It is to be seen. And I really believe that we build community when we see people, when we really take the time to see them. So it's adding on to what everyone said, because it's all, and here's the other thing. It takes intention. It really does, because when we wake up and we're just like going and doing our thing, we're just going and doing our thing. So when we intentionally say, like, okay, I'm doing this I'm having a meeting with someone, how can I actually see them and not think about what I'm trying to get out of it?
Right.
It builds community. And then, to what Hanna said, community comes in lots of different ways, and sometimes where it comes in is very unexpected. So I think that's been one of the biggest gifts actually this year, is building community with people who like show up in your life and you're like, where did this come from? Right. And yet you're so open to it. And, I just want to say this, like I have to just give a little plug and tell you guys the coolest thing. So it's not even a plug. It's just telling you what happened. Speaking of community. So at the beginning of the year, I had a client who called from 20 years ago who saw me do some things on LinkedIn. And what that turned into is us doing mindfulness and meditation for no money. Okay, no money. So there was not a deal to be had here. This was purely out of like chance for the state of North Dakota. State of North Dakota is now my community. And I love them. Hanna knows, like,
great people.
The fact is that is that they're still not paying for this. Other things, thank God, have come from it.
And they will.
And here's the thing, a year later, 3 times a week, we give our time, and we have built a community with people who on mindfulness and meditation who would never be there. Like, I cannot wait to go to North Dakota.
Right.
Anyway,
Out of all places.
in the summer.
I was thinking about Hanna and Carrie's conversation. Oh, who do you know in Toronto? Like, who do you know in North Dakota? I know them all.
I know anyone who works for the state. The fact is that and I say a plug because I feel like it's been the biggest gift of my life. You know, it started because it was like what was going on, and they needed it, and they were so stressed out, and someone asked me to do something, or they didn't even ask me to do that. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, things happen, and we have to be open, and that's how ultimately we build community.
And you mentioned earlier, things come out of nowhere, like a call from someone from 20 years ago out of nowhere.
It was crazy. Yeah. Even that is crazy. And you know what, Darren? That brings up another good point. We build community when we don't know we're building community.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
You know,
that's so true.
There are people that come out in your life that say, you know, I knew you then, or I knew you here, or I was on something and I saw this woman that was in this group, and I said, You don't even know it. You were my mentor. Like, I followed. I have all your books. I mean, you know, that literally 30 years later, I'm on a webinar with her. Mm-hmm. And it just, it's cool. It's cool.
Oh, so I've got the tough job to give the last one, huh? Yeah. But actually, it ties a little bit to the North Dakota piece. Is I would give the advice and tip to not be afraid to really go out there to different groups. You know, we've all been talking about how community is about like-minded individuals, but I've actually learned recently too that it's good to bring in people that you would not expect, because you can actually, you know, have this diversity of thought and diversity of perspective that really makes the world what it is and so unique, right? So my advice is don't be afraid to venture out, and because I've always lived in this, I've got my school professional network, I've got my, you know, church friends, I've got my other high school friends. Like, it's okay to sometimes mix them, you know, and you'll be surprised actually what comes from that.
Yeah,
so.
I love it. Oh my gosh, so much thanks. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for being a part of our community and helping us see our little vision through. This has been a long time coming, and it's been super powerful, which I knew it would be. But thank you very, very much for your time and everything that you brought with you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
I am so excited about the future, and hope to again provide and serve all of you with all it is that you need, and connect you guys together, because John and I think that the true culture of Dallas is its people, and we're growing, and actually we're growing to Jorge's point, with so many people still moving here. Forget all the big companies and all that stuff. Everybody is still moving here. There's a lot of physicians moving here right now. There's a lot of really great people coming to Dallas. And we have the opportunity to, I really think, finally have this like unique culture. It's not just Texas anymore. It's this melting pot now of different cultures and different religions and different perspectives. And so together we get to build that and kind of show everybody who Dallas is. How the cool local people are. So thank you so much.